Hey guys, welcome in. Adam here with Alesis Drums, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to quickly set up your new Strata Club E-Kit step by step. Before we start, remember that if you only need help with a certain part of the assembly, you can use the chapters linked in the description of this video to quickly navigate to any step of the setup process. Let's quickly cover all of the components that are included with your Strata Club. I highly recommend getting everything unboxed and organized right away, as this will make it much easier to keep up with this video as we go along. First up, locate all of your black hardware. This includes 4 legs with their attached mounts, 3 curved crossbars, and 1 shorter arm with a mount. When assembled, these will create the main structure of our drum rack, and these are the first components that we'll need for our assembly. Now we also want to locate our snare stand, our 2 silver L-rods, 2 cymbal arms, and 4 rack clamps. These components will be used to mount our drums and cymbals a little later in this video. For drums, we have a 12-inch snare, 2 matching 10-inch toms, and the 8-inch kick tower is here in the bottom left. For cymbals, we have the 12-inch arc hi-hat, and you'll find the magnetic hi-hat controller and clutch in the same box. We also have a 12-inch crash and a 14-inch ride. And of course, we have our 7-inch touchscreen core module, the module's power adapter, the module mount, and the cable snake. Last but not least, you'll find a bundle of cable straps and a drum key, which we'll save until the final steps of this assembly guide. To begin assembling the rack, start by laying out the 4 largest black poles in the order that you can see here. Note that the inside legs are a little bit longer and will have 2 mounts on each leg. The outside legs are shorter and will only have 1 mount on each leg. The shorter outside legs can be set aside for now. We'll start by attaching these longer inside legs to each other with a curved black crossbar. Don't worry about which crossbar you grab. All 3 crossbars are identical on the Strata Club. Now we want to make sure that these mounts on top are facing each other, and go ahead and loosen those mounts with your drum key. Then insert the ends of your crossbar into these mounts. To ensure that the crossbar is seated all the way inside the mount, just rotate the bar and add a little bit of pressure until the grooves are aligned. You'll feel when the crossbar pops into place. Repeat this for both sides, and then tighten the mounts back down with your drum key. Now you'll see that we also have 2 wing nuts on each mount. These wing nuts are used to adjust the overall height of the crossbars on the legs. If you're on the shorter side, you can loosen these wing nuts on both mounts and slide the crossbar a little bit lower on these legs. That will ultimately lower the height of your drums and cymbals later on. For today's setup, we're going to put these mounts all the way at their highest position. And this is an important design theme that you'll find on all of the Strata drum racks. We use our drum key to secure the crossbars to the mounts, but we use the wing nuts to adjust the height of those crossbars on the legs. In theory, you only need to remove the crossbars when you're fully breaking down the kit. Next up, let's loosen the lower mounts here and rotate these outwards, facing away from the center crossbar that we just installed. Now, grab your 2 remaining curved crossbars and insert them into these mounts that we just loosened. Make sure that the curvature of these crossbars matches the curvature of the middle crossbar. Following the same process, add a little bit of pressure to the crossbar and twist it until it's seated as deeply as possible inside these mounts. Then, tighten the mount back down with your drum key to secure that crossbar in place. You can snug down these wing nuts if you'd like, but don't fully tighten them down just yet. Now, with your shorter outside legs, hopefully still nearby, go ahead and stand this structure upright. We can now insert the ends of our crossbars into these mounts of our outside legs. This will allow the rack to stand up on its own. Before you tighten everything back down, take a moment to ensure that all of your crossbars are level. Now, each of these 3 crossbars can be at different heights, but they still need to be level with the ground. This is going to give you much more stability overall. Now, before we move on, we're looking for 3 things in our rack's structure. The ends of each crossbar should be fully seated within their mounts. Each crossbar should be level to the ground, no matter how high or low it is. And all 4 legs should be touching the ground without any wobble. If you do see any wobble, it's likely due to a crossbar that is not level with the ground. If you can check all 3 of these boxes, then simply tighten down all of your screws and wing nuts, and you should have a very sturdy drum rack that is ready to mount drums. Let's start out by mounting our 10-inch rack tom to our center crossbar. To do this, grab your 2 L rods and 2 of these black clamps. Each clamp has 2 wing nuts, a big one and a small one. If we loosen the bigger wing nut, this will open up the clamp, and then we can wrap it around the crossbar like so. On your center crossbar, install one of these black clamps in the orientation that you can see here, but make sure to keep a little bit of distance from the leg, as we'll be using another clamp on this same crossbar for our left side crash cymbal in the next chapter. Now to mount our tom, just grab one of your L rods and insert it into the open hole of this clamp, as you can see here. You may have to loosen the smaller wing nut of the clamp to do this. Once the L rod is inserted, make sure that the silver bar is facing the ceiling and secure it with the smaller wing nut. From here, we can lower our tom onto the L rod using the wing nut on the back of the drum to secure the drum in place. Now let's repeat this for our second tom. Moving over to your far right crossbar, we'll install another clamp near the center of the bar. Once this clamp is in place as shown, insert your second L rod and tighten it down with the small wing nut. We can now grab our second 10-inch tom and lower it into place, securing it again with the wing nut on the back of the drum. At this point, don't overthink the positioning of your toms, because we can always loosen these clamps later and slide the drums left or right on the crossbar for small adjustments. And if you notice any of this side-to-side tilting, just double check that you've tightened the smaller wing nut on the bottom of the clamp, which will keep the drum from rotating when you play. From here, I would recommend that you put your snare drum on its stand and take a moment to adjust the heights and angles of your 3 drums. Of course, you can do this at any point in time, but it's much easier to make tweaks before we have our cables plugged into the drums. Once your drum's positions feel decent here, make sure that all of your wing nuts are tightened down, and now we're ready to mount our cymbals. To mount our cymbals to the rack, start by grabbing your last 2 black clamps and your 2 metal cymbal arms. We'll start with the left crash, using the space that we've left on the center crossbar between our rack tom mount and the rack's leg. So using one of our 2 remaining clamps, we'll install the clamp as you can see here, making sure that the open hole of the clamp is on the outside of the crossbar and oriented towards the ceiling. Now, grab a silver cymbal arm and drop it down into the open hole of this clamp. Because these cymbal arms are on the shorter side, I'd recommend allowing only 1 inch or less of the cymbal arm to pass through the clamp, then tighten it into place with the clamp's wing nut. To mount the ride cymbal, we'll install our last rack clamp on the right crossbar, ideally to the left of our floor tom here. Make sure to use the same orientation for this clamp that we used on our crash cymbals clamp. Now we can drop our second cymbal arm into place and tighten it down. Keep in mind that these clamp placements are only basic guidelines, and you can absolutely move these clamps around the crossbars to try different cymbal positions. Next, we'll remove these triangular cymbal nuts and felt pads from the tops of each cymbal arm and set them aside. We'll need them soon, so keep them nearby. Now, grab your cymbals and place them onto the cymbal arms. Once these cymbal pads are on the cymbal arms, we can reinstall our felts and secure them down with our toppers. While doing this, remember that all cymbals are supposed to move, even on E-kits. So tighten them down enough to keep your cymbals secure, but some wiggle room is perfectly normal. Last up, we have our hi-hats. Grab your hi-hat stand and remove the clutch so that the hi-hat seat and the pull rod are fully exposed. If your hi-hat has a tilter like this one, make sure that it is completely unscrewed. We don't want any tilt on our hi-hat, and this is a common mistake that drummers can make when setting up electronic hi-hats. A perfectly flat or a level hi-hat will provide the best response. Next, grab your magnetic hi-hat controller, making sure that the port is oriented towards the floor. Slide the controller over the pull rod and lower it onto the hi-hat seat. Next, grab the included hi-hat clutch and install it on your 12-inch arc hi-hat. I recommend that you tighten down the clutch very well onto the hi-hat so that there's no wiggle room or sloshing. Next, we'll place the arc hi-hat and clutch over the pull rod just like an acoustic kit. Later in this video, we'll discuss calibrating the hi-hat, which is done through the core module once we get everything plugged in. And that is it for cymbals. If your cymbal positions feel good and everything is tightened down, let's move on to the kick tower. Okay, so our rack is sturdy, our drums and cymbals are mounted to the rack, and now it's time for some low end. The Strata Club's 8-inch mesh kick tower sits right underneath your middle crossbar, but like any floor component of a drum set, this can be prone to sliding. To keep the kick tower from running away from you, we only need to do 2 things. Well, maybe 3 things if we include working around your sleeping pit bull. At the back of your kick tower, locate these 2 screws on the bottom plate. From the factory, these screws will be loose so that the bottom spikes aren't exposed, but we need these spikes to be extended to grip the carpet. You can tighten these down by hand, but they are spring-loaded, so you may need to use a Phillips head screwdriver to fully expose the spikes. Now our pedal is the second component that actually helps keep this kick tower in place. No matter what kick drum pedal you're using, make sure that the pedal itself is clamped firmly to the kick tower's plate, like you can see here. Some pedals will also have stopping spikes of their own to help further prevent sliding. And one last tip for the kick tower, make sure to use a beater that is made of either plastic or wood and try to avoid felt. Soft beaters of any kind can cause unnecessary wear on the mesh head, and they don't provide an optimal trigger response. And now let's install our core module. Start by plugging in your wiring harness into the underside of the core module. Now this connection isn't solid just yet, but we're going to make use of a very unique clamp to secure the core's cable connection, which looks like this. So take this clamp and pass these wires coming out of your harness through the cutout like you can see here. Once everything is aligned, tighten these two silver screws on the clamp to secure the clamp to the bottom of the module. As you tighten down these screws, you're also tightening the wire harness's connection to the module. Now, locate this last black pole, which will be a little bit shorter than all of the other rack poles that we've used so far. After loosening the wing nut on this pole's mount, we can drop this mount onto the exposed section of the far left rack leg, as you can see here. To attach our module to this shorter pole, we just loosen the wing nut on the underside of the core's module clamp, and we can then slide the module onto our pole, extending the module off of our far left leg. And now you'll be left with a big bundle of cables hanging off of the back of your module, and it's unlikely that your cat is going to be very helpful here. There is no set formula for how to manage eDrum cables, but if you're new to this process, I would recommend slowly working from the left side of the drum set to the right side, making use of the color-coded cables to match each cable to its correct drum or cymbal. And it's completely up to you how much time you want to invest in organizing or managing your cables, but as a general rule, it's a very good idea to keep your cables off of the ground by strapping your cables to the rack with the included Velcro ties. As you can see in these clips from the Strata Core setup tutorial, we can certainly make these a lot cleaner if you have the time. Now, when you finish plugging everything in and managing your cables, you'll find that you have two extra 1/4-inch cables with these caps on them. These two inputs don't need to be plugged in now, but they're essential if you ever choose to expand the club kit with extra drums and cymbals. For anyone interested in maxing out the club's inputs, there are also 2 additional trigger inputs on the back of the core module, giving you a total of 4 extra trigger inputs. In today's video, we're only building the stock club configuration, but there is plenty of room to expand this e-kit if you choose to do so. Before you start playing, you'll want to make sure that your hi-hat is dialed in, and the core module makes this super easy. To calibrate our hi-hat, just power up your core module and then tap on the trigger icon from the home screen here. Then tap hi-hat setup in the top right-hand corner. Here, you'll be prompted to loosen your clutch and let the hi-hats sit freely in their lowest position. Touch the set button, and then we can set our clutch position. Once your clutch is dialed in, take your foot completely off the hi-hat pedal and then press finish. Our hi-hats are now calibrated. Now let's imagine you're on the gig and your clutch position slips. You can quickly adjust your hi-hat sensors on the home screen with this calibration knob. By adjusting the hi-hat bottom position, we can quickly correct our hi-hat's calibration, and this can be a lifesaver in a live gig situation. And finally, before you grab your drumsticks, make sure that you find your drum key and tighten all of your mesh heads. These heads are left fairly loose for shipping, but when we tighten these heads down, the club has a much more realistic feeling. Just give each lug a half turn to the right using a star pattern across the drum to ensure that tension is increased evenly. And that is it. Thanks so much for watching the setup tutorial for the Strata Club. Adam here with Alesis Drums, and I will see you in the next one.